right, hello everybody. Hope you all are doing well. This is DFS Army's tournament strategy show. Almost got mixed up with the show we have later. But on this show, we will look back at last night's slate, see what went well, see what could have gone better, and then we'll go through this massive, insane slate, last regular season show of the year. So let's make it happen. As you can see, I already have the games or the teams that are fighting for something highlighted here. So we'll get to that once we look at the full picture. But anyway, let's look at last night. I didn't have it preset, but it looks like the player who won the $20,000 last night was S-Dub is set. He had Fred VanVleet in the line. We had plenty of Fred VanVleet. It was a slightly positive night for me. More broke even basically, but we hit on a lot of these plays, and so that's what made it pretty good. Let's see, is this okay? Yeah, so Fred VanVleet made the nuts line. He crushed last night, had plenty of him. THT was a core play, had plenty of him. He made the nuts line. Alex Caruso was someone we forced exposure to on the pre-lock show. He made the nuts line. DeMar DeRozan was a core play. I did cap him at 60%, but we were still significantly over the field. Vucevic was a player that we forced exposure to. Kobe White was struggling for a good bit, but he did end up making this nuts line. Luka Samanic was a core play, I believe, or he was someone we had a lot of exposure to. And then Josh Hart was someone that we forced exposure to last night as well. And that was primarily a sim-model play. So that panned out. So yeah, all in all, good night last night. Let's keep the good vibes going. And let's look at today's slate. So we have a massive slate on deck. So much news will happen between now and lock. Pre-lock show will be at 5:30 p.m. today. Brandon will be on there with us. You know, B-Dubs is a really great DFS player as well. And so we'll be in good hands. I'll have plenty more time to react to some of the news that we'll have between now and then as well. And so we'll make it happen. But my general thought process and strategy for today is to take the value that we should get from some of these teams that aren't playing for anything, like the Bulls, Wizards, Hornets, Celtics, Nets, Spurs, Grizzlies, Raptors, maybe the Hawks, Pistons, Mavs. They don't have as much to play for. And so we should be able to get some value from some of these spots, ideally. And then teams like the Magic, Sixers, Pacers, Cavs, Knicks, Nuggets, Lakers, Bucks, Thunder, Heat, Wolves, Timberwolves. Those are teams I want to make sure I do get exposure to on this slate because they are playing for something. And so just, you know, we've seen it in sports before. Players play better when they have a reason to play besides just their paycheck that they get. So let's go ahead and jump into the games. We start off with the Bulls going up against the Wizards tonight. The Bulls are in an interesting spot where they have absolutely nothing to play for after they won last night against Detroit. And so I feel similar to what I said was it last night? All these days blur together, but just like yesterday with the Celtics or the day before that, I no longer trust these star players, even in decent spots, when they had nothing to play for. So DeMar DeRozan, Vucevic, they also are coming on off of a back-to-back. Like they played last night. This is a back-to-back for them. I do not like the Bulls. They project well, but I do not want to see them in my lines. So I have a dislike on DeMar DeRozan because he was showing up too much in my early runs. I'm okay with less than 10%, but I don't really want more than that. Maybe 10 to 15. Vucevic, same story, even though the matchup is so nice. It's really hard for me not to want to play Vucevic here. But I'm worried about the minutes. They have nothing to play for. They're locked into the play-in tournament. No reason to get cute here. Kobe White, again, I'm just not expecting them to see these minutes tonight. Javonte Green, I still like the form he's in. He was okay last night, and I plan on going right back to him here. So I do feel a little bit better about him. And his price tag, even if he does see less minutes tonight, his price tag is still low enough where he can have plenty of upside. So Javonte Green's really the only Bull I'm looking to force exposure to as of right now. We do have Ayo Dosunmu as TBD. Andre Drummond's also TBD. If we have more of these Bulls players sit because they don't have anything to play for tonight, then we might get a little bit more aggressive here. So I'm looking at the Bulls as a team that we might get more value from later today. For the Wizards, Jordan Poole is questionable. That's huge for them. Rashawn Holmes, questionable. Eugene Amori, questionable. Kyle Kuzma's been out. Tyus Jones has been out. This team has absolutely nothing to play for. Jordan Poole's already started to have some stronger performances here lately. He doesn't really have a lot to play for tonight either. It would not shock me if we see him sit and if we see Holmes sit. And if that happens, we have even more value on this slate. Denny Avdia would become a much more viable play at 7,600. He's not too pricey. If he was in the 8K range, I wouldn't be as excited about him. But I'm not planning on playing Avdia unless Poole gets officially ruled out. Corey Kispert is already standing out for me in the sim model. I like him even more if Poole misses this game. Patrick Baldwin also is already projecting as one of the better value options we have on the slate because of all the guys the Wizards have out already. Same situation with Anthony Gill. So the Wizards are already a team I like a lot from a value perspective, but if Jordan Poole gets ruled out, like him even more. So good game here. For the Magic, this is a game where both teams are still playing and fighting for seeding. Right now, we do have Franz Wagner listed as questionable. If he misses this game, I will take shots on Paolo. I will take a shot on Wendell Carter Jr. And I'll have to think a little bit closer at Jalen Suggs, Jonathan Isaac, those type of players. But I will definitely have more Paolo and Carter Jr. As of right now, though, and assuming he plays, because this game does matter a decent amount for them, it's hard for me to find a spot where I want to take a shot on these Magic on how many games do we have? On a gigantic slate like this, I just don't see myself playing the Magic if they're healthy tonight. Different story for the Sixers. The matchup against the Magic is tough. That's something I'm not a big fan of. Right now, Joel Embiid is questionable. Kyle Lowry is questionable. KJ Martin is questionable. But the Sixers need to win. They are at risk of being in the play-in tournament, and that's something that I know they do not want to be a part of. And so Joel Embiid is questionable, but I do expect him to play tonight. I have a like on him. The sim model had some interest in Joel Embiid as well. The matchup's tough here going up against the Magic, but especially if Joel Embiid is relatively low owned on this slate, I'm looking at him as a potential leverage play. Outside of that, no one else is really standing out for me too much. Tough matchup going up against the Magic, even for Joel. Just hoping he's low owned. Hornets have jack shit to play for. They suck. Grant Williams is questionable. Nick Richards is questionable. Right now, the Celtics don't have too much injury news. They have Al Horford listed as TBD and Brissett listed as TBD. But I think the vast majority of the industry is expecting the Celtics to have multiple stars sit tonight just because they have the number one seed locked up and they're going up against the Hornets. So I do think we'll get some great value for the Celtics. And if multiple stars are out, the matchup for the Hornets gets better, which is a painful thing to realize because I really hate playing the Hornets at this point. But if the Boston Celtics sit multiple of their stars and the matchup gets softer, I am open and interested in guys like Trey Mann. Mishik is interesting. If Grant Williams gets ruled out, I would consider taking shots on Miller and Bridges, but as of right now, I'm really just looking at their guards. Bertans isn't showing up for me too much, but he is projecting decently well at 3,600, but I think we'll get better value on this slate. So that's part of why I'm not taking the value too seriously yet. We talked about the Celtics. As of right now, basically everyone's not on the injury report, but we will see who actually ends up playing here. You already see for us in the Domination Station, we're not expecting quite a few of their stars to play, but let's wait until we get that news officially. Yeah, so we still haven't heard anything there. But Peyton Pritchard did stand out on the sim model, so I have a like on him there for those reasons. And the matchup is so soft. I also said it yesterday too, and Peyton Pritchard had a pretty solid game, that I expect these role players / players who barely see any play to have a bit more run tonight. So really, even if we don't get any injury news here, I'm going to have some exposure to Peyton Pritchard. But ideally, we'll get this news early and we can just load up guys like Pritchard and Hauser and Cornette or Tillman and Springer and Brissett. But we'll see. We'll see. I think that's going to get really interesting. Then we have another game that matters a good bit. The Pacers going up against the Cavs. The matchup is tough. Halliburton stood out a little bit for me in the sim model, but he's not a top priority for me by a long shot on this slate. I still don't like picking on the Cavs, so it's really just Halliburton here for me. I'm not looking at anyone else there. And then we have the Cavaliers. This team's looking healthy. They are probably going to be the 4th seed here, but they could end up getting the 2nd seed. Who knows if they can go on a bit of a streak here and if some other teams lose. But they're probably going to stay close to where they are. For me, highest total game on the slate. Y'all know I want to take a shot here. I'm happy for the Cavs that they're healthy. Congrats to them. But it makes it, from a DFS standpoint, it makes life tough. Donovan Mitchell's a pretty easy pass at his price tag. Jared Allen going up against the team and the Pacers that gives the 9th most fantasy points to post bigs is appealing. I just like Allen more when Mobley doesn't play. So as of right now, Jared Allen's really the only Cleveland Cav I'm interested in taking a shot on, but you can make an argument for Donovan Mitchell or Mobley as well. Garland's a little bit tougher to pull the trigger on. I know we took that shot relatively recently, but I'm not seeing it today. Playoffs. Playoffs will go back there. What's up, Daniel? Does Denny Avdia play full minutes or get pulled like Jalen Green? Who knows, Daniel? Who knows? I have absolutely no idea. There's no way of knowing. If Poole sits, though, I'm going to play him. That simple for me. The tough part about this time of year is that you just never know what coaches are going to do. And you can try and make an educated guess, but that educated guess might be what burns you. So for me, my thought process is just still do what makes sense. But not go too crazy on guys that we know have a little bit more of a risk, like Denny. You can just play bench players. That can work. It can. There are still teams playing for things, though. And so that's what we're trying to attack and focus on is you just got to try and focus on the teams that are playing for something. And then we take the bench players from teams like the Wizards and Celtics because they should see more run. But I do think, hopefully for the Celtics, we should get a lot of that news ahead of time. But if they do decide to just play maybe the first quarter, that's going to be annoying as hell. Or if they play their entire normal run, like if the Celtics starters all play their typical run tonight against the Hornets and smash, that would be really annoying. But for me, that doesn't make a ton of sense. And so I'm not playing for it. Yeah. Jalen Green, I think I had around like 45% exposure to. So he definitely held me back yesterday, but Fred VanVleet helped a lot too. Sad and scary. The risk of DFS just go up even more towards the end of the season. All right, so back on track. So for the Nets, let's see. For the Nets tonight, where are we at with injury news? Nets have nothing to play for. Cam Johnson's questionable. Sharp is questionable. Gilliard's probable. Dorian Finney-Smith. These guys have been out for a while now. I don't like picking on the Knicks. The Knicks still have playoff seeding implications that they're fighting for. Noah Clowney is a very strong value option on this slate. As we've gotten closer towards the end of the season, his minutes have started to trend up. But I do believe we're going to have a lot of value on this slate. So again, don't want to over focus on him, but he's definitely a viable option. Outside of that, I'm not playing the Nets. For the Knicks tonight, similar to last night, and for like the last 2 weeks, I've really just been trusting the sim model on the Knicks, and it's just been coming through. I don't love the matchup against the Nets. They tend to be pretty solid from a defensive standpoint, but once again, Sim still likes Josh Hart and Dante DiVincenzo, and so I'm still going to keep playing them, probably close to field weight. I doubt, just because there's so many games on this slate, I doubt I'll be able to get above the field on them unless they're just extremely low owned. But we'll see where ownership falls later. And that's about it. That's about it for the Knicks. Not my favorite game, but Sim Model kind of pointed me in that direction. Nuggets are still fighting for their number one seed. Lucky for them, they have one of the softest matchups in the world going up against the Spurs. Soft matchup for everybody here. Spurs are just one of those teams we've been able to pick on all year. Let me double check on that and just make sure they haven't improved anywhere. They've been better on the wing defensively, and they've been better against forwards here lately. So definitely still some. They've improved over the last few weeks or so from what we saw earlier this season. They are still awful, though, against versatile bigs and guards. And that's really who I want to attack with. Nikola Jokic is someone that I'm definitely going to have exposure to. And then Jamal Murray, if he's below 5%, that's when I really want to force some exposure to him. But ideally, I'll be around field weight on Jamal Murray just because the Spurs are giving up the second most fantasy points to combo guards. And so Jamal Murray can be explosive, and he tends to, like most players, have some of his best games in soft matchups. And we just saw that against the Jazz. So looking to attack with Jokic and Murray here. Other players I'm not overly interested in. This is not a team. Actually, I was going to say this is not a team you want to take bench players from, but if this game gets blown out pretty early, you could get cute doing that, but I don't think it's necessary. All right, for the Spurs, apparently Victor's going to play tonight. Again, the Spurs have absolutely nothing to play for. Victor can have high ceiling performances even in tough matchups. We've seen him do decently well already this season multiple times against Denver. He did it just a couple of games ago. I believe he was a leverage play for us that night because no one was playing him. Once again, if no one... I feel like you all pretty much know what I do with Victor. If no one plays Victor, I play him. If everyone's playing him, I don't. We'll see where ownership falls. I think he's going to be pretty low owned, and so I have a like on him already because pretty sure no one's going to play him for good reason. It wouldn't shock me if he gets taken out early or something like that, but they haven't done that so far this season, so I'm going to play Victor once again here if no one else does. And then Sandro disappointed us last time around when the Spurs were on the slate. Sim model still likes him. Projections still like him. I'm just following the lead on those. I don't love Sandro here, but I'll just trust the tools here with him. Outside of that, none of the other Spurs are showing up too much for me. He's only playing to get Rookie of the Year. He solidified that at this point, man. He could have stopped playing a week ago and would have still won that. I don't know why he's still playing. I do not understand it, but I'm not going to question it. Like, as long as he stays healthy and it works, it's fine. Lakers are fighting for a lot here when it comes to seeding. Play-in tournament is getting intense. 3-way tie. Lakers have a super soft matchup against the Grizzlies. Anthony Davis is a potential leverage play for me tonight, depending on his ownership. Really like him. Don't love LeBron. D'Angelo Russell is on my radar. I need to look a little bit closer at him in the matchup. He stood out a little bit for me in the sim model. But again, I think we're going to have a lot of value on this slate. And so I'm just not certain if I want to prioritize D'Angelo Russell at 7,800 with the Lakers being pretty healthy. But he's viable. So I have a like on him as someone I just want to keep a close eye out on. But AD is really the top priority for me for the Lakers tonight. Grizzlies are still the value option. The price tag on these guys have gone up, but not nearly enough for us to not have to still talk about them. I'm not going to go through it. Grizzlies are missing a shit ton of guys still. Scottie Pippen's been great. Matchup solid. Jordan Goodwin's still only 5,900. Again, that is an increase, but not nearly enough. Still very viable in an average matchup. Similar story with Jake LaRavia. Those are really the three main pieces I'm looking at. Trey Jemison is still showing up a little bit in some of my runs, but again, I don't want to take this team too seriously yet, because if we do get more value in that 4K, upper 3K range, the priority of needing to have the Grizzlies on this slate goes down. Right now, we don't have all the value that we're going to have on this slate. And so the Grizzlies are showing up a lot for me in my early runs. But if we get more value, I do expect my exposure to lower to the Grizzlies. So it's just a timing thing. And if we don't get the value, then Memphis is the value once again on this slate that helps you kind of have balance build or 1 or 2 studs if you can fit them all in. For the Bucks tonight, so many games. For the Bucks tonight, they are looking relatively healthy. Let me see if I'm missing anything. Oh, I'm wrong. Damian Lillard, doubtful. Chris Middleton, questionable. Brook Lopez, questionable. Bobby Portis, questionable. They don't have too much to play for here. I think it looks like they're probably going to sit this one out if we had to make an educated guess here with all the Q tags they have already, which means we could get a lot of value from the Bucks tonight. It's weird. There's a lot going on here that's a little muddy, but I believe Milwaukee, whatever Boston. Yeah, the Bucks have the tiebreaker between the Knicks, and it looks like that's might be why they're not overly concerned. I don't know. It's kind of weird to me that the Bucks would throw this game away and just kind of sit everybody, but if that happens, we might have value here. If they play, then guys like I know Damian Lillard is doubtful, but Chris Middleton could definitely be an interesting option because they do still have things to play for. I would expect him to still see typical run. So if he plays, I think Chris Middleton could be a little sneaky. Bobby Portis is obviously viable without Giannis. Brook Lopez is always a bit more interesting. He's questionable, so we'll see what happens there. Patrick Beverley is not on the injury report. If Lillard sits, we're going to have a lot of Patrick Beverley tonight. Malik Beasley also would be viable. But really, the only guy I can look at with confidence right now is Patrick Beverley, and that does not feel good to say. The Bucks are going to be a headache today. I could just already tell. For the Thunder, they're healthy going up against the Bucks. One of the few teams that are relatively healthy. The matchup should be pretty soft, especially if the Bucks sit a lot of their players. I'm looking at the Thunder as potential leverage plays if the Bucks throw in the towel here. SGA would be hard for me to get to, but Chet at 7,200 would have plenty of upside, especially if we see a guy like Brook Lopez sit out tonight. And if Bobby Portis sits tonight for rest. I think that would be really, really good for Chet. Jalen Williams would also be another guy that I'm looking at. So I'm going to go ahead and put a like on them just to make sure I don't forget. But it's really less about them and more about who plays for the Bucks. Raptors have a matchup against the Heat. For the Raptors tonight, they have Gary Trent Jr. listed as questionable. Bruce Brown is questionable. The Raptors don't have anything to play for. They're going up against the Heat. Not a great matchup. Heat do there's not a lot going on here for the Raptors. From a DFS standpoint, they're not nearly cheap enough for me to be excited about them. I am just not doing that. The Heat do still have something to play for. They have a chance to get out of the play-in, but it's not overly likely that will happen. It will take a lot of luck. They do have a fantastic matchup against the Raptors, though, which is why I love Bam Adebayo once again. I like Bam. And then Jimmy Butler's interesting to me. I haven't pulled the trigger on him just yet, but I don't want to forget about him. And we're getting the news now that basically all the Celtics are questionable, as we expected. Terry Rozier is questionable for the Heat. Duncan Robinson's out. If Terry gets ruled out, the Heat, especially guys like Tyler Hero, become a bit more interesting to me. I would actually really like Tyler Hero here if Rozier gets ruled out. But for now, I'm really just looking at Bam and Jimmy. I like to pick on the Raptors front court more than trying to attack with shooters. 2 more games. All right. Next up, we have the Hawks going up against the Timberwolves. For the Hawks, we have DeJounte Murray listed. Let's see. Maybe I'll just type in Murray. Yeah. We have DeJounte Murray listed as questionable. Clint Capella is questionable. AJ Griffin is questionable. Wesley Matthews is out. The Hawks don't really have too much to play for. They've really locked in that 10th seed. I mean, yeah, the Bulls have the tiebreaker. So, yeah, there's not really much for them to play for here. But if DeJounte Murray sits, this team becomes a bit more interesting. Trae Young is someone that I would be nervous to play at 9,300. Just a really pricey player who I don't really foresee seeing a ton of run, but he did have a decent game in that double overtime game in the last one. But still, I'm not overly interested in Trae Young here. If Murray sits, Bogdan becomes a bit more viable, but the matchup against the Timberwolves is still one I don't love to pick on. Let's see if there's maybe an area that might stand out for us. Atlanta. Yeah. Clint Capella's questionable. That could make things a little bit more interesting. Guys like Bruno and whoever else they want to have behind him. But as of right now, even if Murray sits, I'm not overly excited about this team. It would really take Murray and Capella to get ruled out for me to be a little bit more excited about them. Nice total, though, in the game. Timberwolves. Karl Anthony Towns is expected to return tonight, which is good for the Timberwolves, bad for us. I would have loved Anthony Edwards tonight if Cat wasn't playing. Anthony Edwards is still a viable tournament, ideally low-owned option that as we get closer to lock, I want to take a shot on because I love the matchup. We can't expect Cat to be on some sort of minutes limit. For me, he's not a viable DFS play. But I do like Rudy Gobert. Obviously, I would have liked him a lot more if Karl Anthony Towns was not playing tonight. But the matchup for Rudy gets even better if Capella doesn't play tonight, even though Capella is not someone that we're ever concerned about. But at 7,500, I like him a lot. Great matchup against the Hawks. Good game environment. Gobert's someone I will force exposure to, whereas I'm still questioning guys like Anthony Edwards. Naz Reid at this price tag is unplayable if Cat plays. Unless Cat really just barely plays tonight. But I don't think that's really going to be what happens. For me, it's just a no for both of them. Pistons are god-awful. They're going up against the Mavs. For the Pistons tonight, let's see. Do we have any value options from this team? I don't think so. I think the pieces that they're missing, they've been going about for a while. Cade Cunningham is listed as TBD. He's not playing. Simone Fontecchio is listed as TBD. Doubt he's playing. So unfortunately, with that being the case, and they've been out for a while, that's not really new news. You can still look at guys like Jalen Duren or Marcus Sasser, but again, I think we're going to have more exciting, more interesting, better value options available than these plays in a matchup against the Mavs who, just play at a slow pace, widespread. Just hard for me to get excited about the Pistons tonight. The Mavericks. Luka Doncic is questionable. They don't have a lot to play for. They should be in the 5 slot. We know what happens here. If Luka sits, Kyrie Irving's already out. We start to look at guys like Tim Hardaway Jr. at 4,700. Dante Exum is already a viable option on this slate at 4,200, but he becomes close to a must-play if Luka Doncic gets ruled out. This is just one of the many examples on this slate of how fast things can turn if news turns the right way. Personally, I would love it if Luka played, but this would be a great spot for him going up against the Pistons, but I still don't think I would feel overly comfortable forcing too much exposure to him just because they don't have too much to play for at this point. And that's the slate in a nutshell, guys. There's some interesting spots, but there's a lot that we're still waiting on. And that's just the truth of the matter. I think anyone who goes out there and they're telling you this is the obvious play of the day, they're just lying to you. We can't know yet who's the obvious play of the day. But what we can do is have a good game plan and just know what we're trying to focus on. Focus on teams that are playing for something. Those are where I want the stars from. And then I want to get my value pieces from the teams that aren't trying for shit and they're players fighting for their jobs. Like, that's when you see those explosive performances. So hopefully you can find the right mix of that. Of course, B-Dubs will be on the pre-lock show later today at 5:30 p.m., so we'll be in a good place for that. And I'll see you all later. For Monday, that show, we'll see what the schedule looks like for the playoffs, and we'll just go from there. But the plan is to keep this show going at least for round one. We'll see if you all stick around for it. If not, we'll just end it here, and that's okay. But I appreciate the support. Y'all have been with me all season. It's been a good one. Let's end on a high note, and I'll see y'all later. Peace out, guys.